2,500 years have passed, but one name is still remembered as a symbol of power, ambition, and conquest. And that name is Alexander the Great, a conqueror who, in his short life, changed the map of the world. After taking the throne at age 20, within just a few years, Alexander had conquered territories from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and India. In an era when communication was slow, maps were incomplete, and travel took months or years, Alexander built history's largest empire. He created such a cocktail of Greek philosophy, Persian administration, and Eastern traditions that the world was left watching in awe. But how did Alexander accomplish all this? Was he truly great? Or just an ambitious young king who, despite conquering everything, couldn't conquer himself? Let's find out in today's video. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of ancient Greek Macedonia. Alexander's father was Philip II, king of Macedon, and his mother's name was Olympias, who was one of Philip's 7 wives. Because Alexander was a prince, he received all the privileges that a king's son would receive. Plutarch writes in his book, The Life of Alexander, that private tutors were hired for Alexander's education, and one of them was Leonidas, who was Philip's relative. Leonidas was a strict teacher and ruthlessly trained Alexander in combat, horse riding, and military tactics. A few years later, another teacher was appointed named Lysimachus, who trained Alexander in music and poetry and also taught him reading and writing. When Alexander was only 10 years old, a trader brought a horse to his father. But no one could control that horse, and seeing this, Philip was about to refuse the trader when Alexander stepped forward and said he could tame this horse. Hearing this, Philip was somewhat surprised, but also curious to know if Alexander truly had the capability to do this. So he gave Alexander permission. Then Alexander approached the horse and first spoke to it gently, then petted it and slowly mounted it and began riding it comfortably. Seeing this scene, Philip was so impressed that he said to Alexander, "My son, seek a kingdom worthy of yourself. Macedonia is too small for you." After this, he bought that horse and named it Bucephalus. This was the very horse on which Alexander would win countless battles. After this, when Alexander was 13 years old, his training went to a different level when Philip hired Aristotle, considered one of history's greatest philosophers. Aristotle gave Alexander daily lessons at the Temple of Nymphs, located in Myesa. Here, Alexander studied with other royal children, many of whom became his good friends and later his generals. Aristotle gave Alexander lessons in religion, art, logic, and philosophy. King Philip was so impressed with this training that he rebuilt Aristotle's hometown of Stagira, which had been destroyed in a war, and also freed all the slaves there. Alexander's first challenge came when he was only 16 years old. King Philip had declared war on the Byzantine kingdom and was leading an army into battle. So he left Macedonia in Alexander's hands and departed for battle. For 16-year-old Alexander, this was a huge responsibility, which people thought to exploit. A European tribe called the Thracian Maidi started a rebellion against Macedonia, thinking that under 16-year-old Alexander, the kingdom had become weak. The consequence of underestimating Alexander had to be suffered quickly when Alexander sent an army and drove them from their territories, settled other Greek citizens there, and named it Alexandropolis. When King Philip returned from battle and saw how Alexander had handled this revolt, he was quite impressed. After this, he allotted Alexander his own small army and gave him the responsibility of handling potential future revolts in the kingdom. For the next 3 years, Alexander joined his father in his military campaigns. In this campaign, they first defeated the kingdoms of Elatea and Amphissa, and then, at Chaeronea, they faced the armies of Athens and Thebes, beginning the Battle of Chaeronea. Philip decided he would command the right wing of his army, and Alexander the left wing, which he led excellently, and they won this battle, after which the majority of Greece came under Philip's control. After succeeding in Greece, Philip set his sights on the Persian Empire, and this time again he gave Alexander the responsibility of managing his kingdom and left. Alexander once again fulfilled this responsibility well. When Philip returned, he decided to marry again. His new wife's name was to be Cleopatra Eurydice. This marriage dealt a blow to Alexander's dream of becoming the next king, because Cleopatra was pure Macedonian, and Alexander was half Macedonian, because his mother wasn't from Macedonia. This meant that if Cleopatra had a son, he would become the throne's successor before Alexander. Plutarch writes in his book that during the wedding, Cleopatra's uncle Attalus raised a glass of wine and wished that Cleopatra would soon have a son, so that in the future, Macedonia would get a true Macedonian king. Hearing this, Alexander became so angry that he threw his cup at Attalus and shouted, "You villain! What am I then? A bastard?" Seeing his father sit silently, Alexander was so hurt that he took his mother and went to Epirus, where his uncle, King Alexander I, lived. Meanwhile, in Macedonia, King Philip also had a son with Cleopatra, but he was very sad about Alexander leaving. Actually, he didn't want to remove Alexander from his successor position. Then, he sent messages to convince him and ordered him to return, and Alexander, following these orders, came back to Macedonia. But after this, the old equation between them was gone. After this, Philip fixed the marriage of his daughter, whose name was also Cleopatra, with Alexander's uncle and his own brother-in-law, the king of Epirus. And soon, the wedding day arrived. The wedding began, and as soon as King Philip entered the theater, one of his bodyguards suddenly stabbed him, causing his death on the spot. There are many conflicting sources about the reason for this assassination, but according to historian Diodorus, the bodyguard who committed the assassination was named Pausanias of Arestis. Apparently, Attalus's men had exploited him, and he wanted King Philip to punish those people. But that didn't happen, and due to not getting justice, he took this extreme step. After King Philip's death, Alexander was declared King of Macedonia. Alexander was quite shocked by his father's passing, but he also knew that if he didn't make some tough decisions, his life could also be at risk. After this, Alexander made some decisions that made people's souls tremble. According to historian Diodorus, Alexander I, along with his mother, had Philip's new wife Cleopatra and her newborn child killed. At that time, Attalus was in Asia Minor, so Alexander sent execution orders there and had him killed, and then, one by one, carefully selected and killed all his political rivals. After this, as soon as the news spread that a strong and dominant king like Philip was no more, and now his 20-year-old son had become king, revolts started again in various places in the kingdom, such as the recently conquered states of Athens and Thebes, which thought they could now become independent again. Without listening to his advisors, Alexander himself set out with an army of 3,000 soldiers to end these revolts. First, he reached Thebes and destroyed the entire city. And after this, Alexander's fear began to show in the other kingdoms, and the revolts cooled down. After this, whichever state Alexander went to, he was welcomed there without opposition, and he established himself as a strong ruler. But Alexander wasn't one to be satisfied with just this. Aristotle's teachings had made him ambitious since childhood, and now that he had become king, he wanted to rule the entire world. The year was 334 BC. Alexander left Greece in the hands of his trusted military general Antipater and set out toward Persia with an army of 40,000 soldiers. Alexander believed that the Persian kingdom was a gift to him from God. Alexander and his army first faced resistance in Persia at the Battle of the Granicus River. This river was a huge obstacle for Alexander's army. The Persian army was being led by their military general Memnon of Rhodes. He positioned his army, which was about half the size of Alexander's army, around the Granicus River and waited for Alexander's army. Alexander, showing his military excellence here, used the tactic of wedge-shaped assault. He lowered his army into the river and attacked directly at the center of the Persian army. According to some sources, Alexander himself descended into battle here and personally killed many Persian soldiers. One soldier even attacked him with an axe, from which he almost died. But he survived, and due to his superior army, Alexander won this battle. In this battle, approximately 4,000 Persian soldiers were killed, and Greek casualties remained around only 50, after which the remaining Persian soldiers had to flee from there. Some Persian soldiers were captured, and among them were soldiers who were previously in the Greek army, whom Alexander declared traitors and put them all to death right there. After this, Alexander captured the Lydian kingdom's capital Sardis and reached the Ionian coast, where people welcomed him without opposition. And Alexander told the people here that they were now free from Persian rule and could now live democratically. After this, marching forward, he reached Halicarnassus, which was a coastal fort city and also an important naval base of the Persian kingdom, which had huge walls that were difficult to cross. After losing the Battle of Granicus, Memnon of Rhodes was stationed here with his army. Alexander surrounded this fort with his army, then built towers, ramps, and catapults outside the fort and began attacking. In response, the Persians made surprise attacks at night and tried to destroy Alexander's equipment, but they didn't get much success in this. According to modern historians like A.B. Bosworth, the siege continued for about 2 months, after which the Persians couldn't stop these attacks anymore. And then, on Memnon of Rhodes's orders, they set fire to the city and fled by sea. After this, Alexander captured Halicarnassus and made Ada of Caria, the original queen from whom this city was taken, queen again. In return, Ada adopted Alexander, which indirectly gave Alexander control of Halicarnassus. After this, moving forward, Alexander reached Phrygia, the capital of Gordium, and here, according to some Greek legends, some people there took Alexander to a shrine where a chariot was tied with a rope in a very complex way, forming a complicated knot. Then they told Alexander that whoever unties this knot will become the ruler of Asia. After hearing this, Alexander drew his sword and cut the rope in one swing. After this, Alexander moved south with his army, where he was now going to face a large army, and this was the army of Darius III, who was the king of the Achaemenid Empire of Persia. Then, a battle took place between them, which is called the Battle of Issus. Despite having a smaller army compared to Darius's army, Alexander's tactical skills and brave approach won him this battle, after which Darius had to flee from there, leaving his entire kingdom. After this, Alexander's fear had increased so much everywhere that as soon as he came toward any kingdom with his army, that kingdom would surrender on its own. By 332 BC, Alexander had captured Syria and Lebanon. After this, Alexander's eyes fell on Tyre, which was an island on the Mediterranean coast. Due to the water all around this island and its large walls, it was difficult to conquer. First, Alexander besieged this island for 7 months. Then, showing an example of his brilliance, he had his army build a path filled with stones in the water itself and sent the army into the island. According to historian Arian of Nicomedia, after waiting for months, Alexander became so angry that upon entering the island, he massacred 8,000 people. After this, Alexander moved toward Egypt with his army, and all the kingdoms on this route surrendered. But one kingdom showed the courage not to surrender, and that kingdom was Gaza at that time, which was located on a hill. Climbing up here and entering the city was quite difficult, but Alexander was determined that he had to capture Gaza. His army tried to enter the city 3 times, but wasn't successful. Then, in the final attempt, they entered the city. During this, many of Alexander's soldiers were killed. Alexander himself also received a serious injury to his shoulder. After this, Alexander headed toward Egypt, where people welcomed him as their son of God and liberator, and considered him equal to their pharaohs. Here, he established the city of Alexandria, which was going to become a major trading center in the future. After Egypt, Alexander set out for Babylon, which was the capital of Persia, and this is where King Darius had taken refuge after losing the battle. Alexander now had 47,000 soldiers, but some historians believe that Darius had an army of 1 million soldiers in Babylon. In 331 BC, both armies faced each other at Gaugamela. At the front line of his army, Darius placed chariots and elephants so they could crush Alexander's army. In response, Alexander placed his troops forward so they could properly aim at the chariots. Darius himself was in a chariot, and during the battle, he fell from his chariot, and then mounting a horse, he fled from the battle again, seeing which his soldiers also started fleeing. And Alexander won the battle once again. After this, Alexander captured other cities like Susa and Persepolis and looted everything there. Then he decided to find Darius and kill him, so that Darius couldn't make any more moves against him. But before this, Darius's close man Bessus killed him and took his place. After this, Alexander kept moving forward in Asia, searching for Bessus, and during this time, he established several cities in his name. Eventually, Bessus's own generals betrayed him and handed him over to Alexander, and he was killed. During this same campaign, in 327 BC, Alexander captured Bactria, and to build strong alliances in this region, he married Roxana, the daughter of a ruler named Oxyates. Now Alexander's eyes fell on India. First, he sent delegates with orders for Indian kings to surrender. Some small kingdoms surrendered, and those who refused had to face Alexander's violent army. Their villages and cities were burned with great brutality. After this, Alexander got his most challenging opposition from King Porus of the Punjab region, who was the king of the Paurava kingdom. Then, the Battle of the Hydaspes took place between both armies. Arian of Nicomedia writes in his book Anabasis Alexandri that Alexander won this battle, after which Porus was captured. But during the battle, Alexander was so impressed by Porus's military tactics and bravery that he offered Porus co-rulership. Then, a deal was made between them, in which it was decided that Alexander would be the new king of Porava, but Porus would rule under him. After this, Alexander had conquered more territory than any ruler in history. But his ambitions still hadn't diminished, and he wanted to move forward with the army into India. But his army, tired of fighting battles, was now exhausted, so they refused to go further, which caused revolts to start in the army. One of Alexander's generals told him that the soldiers were longing to see their families, their children, and their homeland. Hearing this, Alexander felt sympathy for his soldiers and decided to return. But Alexander was compelled by his habits, and even while returning, he kept capturing small villages. After this, when Alexander returned to Persia, people welcomed him, calling him King of Kings. Alexander really liked Persian customs and started adopting Persian habits and dressing, which seemed very strange to Alexander's generals. While returning from here, Alexander went to his previously captured regions and executed his own generals who were involved in corruption and injustice. In 324 BC, Alexander reached the Susa region of Persia, where to further strengthen relations with Persia, he arranged mass marriages of his generals with Persian noble women, and himself married two royal Persian women named Statira and Parysatis. Although Alexander had 3 wives, according to some historians like Robin Lane Fox and Paul Cartledge, Alexander also had relationships with men, especially with his closest friend, Hephaestion. After this, Alexander reached Babylon and decided to stay there for a few days. Here, Alexander started planning to conquer Arabia. During this time, Alexander partied every day and drank a lot. On the night of June 1st, 323 BC, Alexander came to his room drunk from a party and went to sleep. At night, he suddenly developed a very high fever and his condition began to deteriorate. According to historian Arrian, for the next 12 days, Alexander's health deteriorated. Every effort was being made to save him, but no medicine worked. And finally, at just 32 years of age, Alexander breathed his last. Some sources also claim that perhaps someone killed Alexander by poisoning him. The death of the world's greatest king shocked the entire empire. People couldn't believe that such a strong and brave king had passed away at such a young age. Alexander was buried in Alexandria. In the coming centuries, Alexander's name began to be associated with bravery, and many emperors came from far and wide to pay their respects at his tomb. It is said that Roman Emperor Augustus also came to see his body. Today, the location of Alexander's tomb has become one of the world's mysteries. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Making such videos takes a lot of hard work and time, so your support is very important for our motivation. And before you go, definitely tell us in the comments section which period of history you would like to see videos about next. See you soon with another history documentary.